I just want to ask, Dr. Wang and Nakamura-san, how do you guys see the role of government, right, in your respective country in promoting cloud, as well as, the sensitivities, right, of data in the cloud?
Okay. First of all, as I mentioned in my talk, government owns a lot of useful data. Like Taiwanese government has all the sale transaction, because every one of them need to have a receipt. Right? Every transaction a receipt, and that has lots of data. Even though many of the data didn't have the person who make the purchase, but it's still very useful data. And in recent years, governments start to have these applications that help you to manage your receipts. Okay, so now there's a person associated with those transactions. So then, people may start to worry about where the privacy be violated. Yeah, but I think that, I was in a panel with another person who actually, from US, who actually say that there is there's nothing about privacy 100 years ago. So there will be no privacy in the future as well, because regardless, your footprint is everywhere. Right? Every transaction you do, everywhere you go, every shop you visited, it's all on the record somewhere. And so the question is, what do you what do you exchange for? So that when we apply for credit card, right, and we give them all the information that can destroy us, but you had established a trust, right? So how do we establish trust between the government and the people? I think that's the key thing, and that depends on how do you regulate the government activity. Right? As long as the government is regulated, there's a regulating body that's separate from the government. I think the citizen can feel a lot safer, right? And when the government open up those data, there's great opportunities for the commercial value, and so the government should very actively open up those data. But for some sensitive data, I think one mechanism is to use the APIs to protect the raw data, but allow the enterprise to leverage those data, and that government can run a data center that only give out the results, but not the data themselves.
Thank you.
Okay, in Japan, as you know, the Kasumigaseki cloud is one of the typical e-government cloud, but the Kasumigaseki cloud is just a private cloud, not a public cloud. In Japan, so including local governments, there exist 4,000 local governments in Japan, and maybe I guess 30% of these governments only use private clouds. The remaining governments just use on-premise services, on-premise servers. The reason why the remaining governments cannot use or move to use cloud services is anxiety of security. Especially in Japan, there is several local government laws, especially for security. So, and another point of the citizens' standpoint, the citizens also awareness of steal their personal information or financial information or medical information. So there are a lot of anxiety of security. It's the reason why there is a little private cloud in Japan.
Right. Okay, so it looks like security as well as the participation of government is actually fairly important because they hold a lot of data and they could access to us. How about from the IDA standpoint, Yao Xing?
Well, we do have a government.gov.sg. I don't think we put PII information on the website. Mostly aggregated data, right, which are still useful for people to use. At the same time, IDA have embarked on an initiative that we since the launch of the ISO 27018, if you're aware, August last year, which is the protection of PII in the cloud, in the public cloud, by the cloud provider as a data processor. So there are a lot of interest among the user with this guideline. That means how they will probably be in the near future asking the data provider, are you ISO 27018 comply, so that my data is safe to be hosted in your cloud. So in that respect, IDA actually have embarked on comparing the MTCS standard with this ISO 27018. So the gaps are mapped out and they are published at the IDA website, so as to enable our cloud service provider to identify the gaps, and they can go on to do extra, right, to protect. So to give assurance to the user, cloud user who are data controller, right? The cloud users who put the data in the cloud, they are data controller, they decide what they want to do with the cloud, with the data, whereas the cloud provider are just data processor. They act according to the instructions of the cloud user, right? So, but the gap is published, the cloud service provider can identify the gaps and do necessary to cover the gaps, so that they give the data user or the data controller the assurance that they have the necessary control in place to safeguard the data in the public cloud.
Okay, thank you. I just want to pick up on the discussion earlier on SME or SMB on cloud, right? Because I think that is actually a very important topic to talk about. I mean, it has transcended over the last 3 cloud conferences, and we still talk about this, right? In Singapore, what I know that we are doing is that we are trying to create a body of knowledge, right? Which is a effort by the Computer Society as well as IDA being a secretariat, but also involving the industry as well as academics. So what we were trying to do is to actually try to explain what cloud is, right, to everyone, especially on the SMB, SME side, right? I'm actually very excited that, you know, we in Singapore are not the only one, right, that's seeing that SMB need help to get onto the cloud and therefore increase the productivity. Perhaps, maybe Dr. Wang, to expand further, what are, other than the platform that I think you guys, a fantastic platform you guys have built, right? What are the emotional attachment of the SMB, you know, when you approach them and say, hey, why aren't you going to the cloud, you know, right? Any comments on that?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is that they don't understand cloud and big data. Okay, so they were looking at something in the sky, right? Too high for them to grasp. And they all heard about the benefits of the cloud, but they don't know how their business connect to those benefits. So that's why we are spinning off a company to help the SMBs to adapt to cloud, right? By bridging the gaps between the current available services and what they need. So the SMB, most of them, they don't need to know virtual machines. They need to know what process service I can use, right? From point of sales to the logistics to payment and all those things that they can use immediately. So the software service is probably the easiest ones for them to adapt if they are integrated. And Taipei City has tried to provide free software as a service to SMB, and using our cloud infrastructure as a base, and then open source solutions on top. It was not very successful because most of the company, they don't have the ability to grab each individual service and link them together. So we need to link those together for them so they can just very easily adapt them. I think that's the key, making it easy, simple, cheap.
That's a good summary. Yeah, right. Nakamura-san, what is your view?
I am very interested in the Singapore's approach. Unfortunately, in Japan, there is some kind of boundaries of government. So each government has their own rules, own regulations. There is no standards over all Japan. So it's very difficult. It's very, very difficult for us to how we can issue the guideline or standards that covers all Japan, all enterprises. So it's one big issue just now. So I'm very interested in your Singapore's approach. It's very, very interesting for us. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yao Sheng, what is your comment?
Actually, in National Cloud Computing Office in IDA, we're actually doing twofold, attacking a problem twofold. First, we see the cloud literacy. So we have introduced a lot of awareness talk in the past. And for this year, as you say, we focus on data. So we run the Data 101 talk. In fact, we run 2 talks, public talk at NLB per month, all right? And 1 talk is focused on the business, the other talk more on the technical track. So we have completed almost close to 20 talks. The last one is early November. I don't remember the exact date, but you can come to IDA booth. There's information leaflet there. You can take a look. And at the same time, besides doing this talk, public awareness talk to the public, we also planning to produce a handbook, right, for the user, for the general public, or more, you may say, like a Cloud 101, right, handbook, so that a lot introduce you to the basic concept, basic idea about cloud. So this handbook will probably target to ready in the next few months, right?
Oh, next few months, the handbook will be out.
Yes, and the other effort we have, as I mentioned in my talk, is the success program, right? We see for SMB, right? They really do not have the resources. Neither they may not even have the IT people, right, to help them. So their key interests in cloud, the key target are the SaaS, the software as a service. They just want to use their accounting packages. They just want to use the HR packages and so on. So with that, after when we launch the MTCS, we go ahead to certify a lot of infrastructure provider, right? IaaS provider. Then the next stage, this is what we are focusing on, is to bring the SaaS into the certified infrastructure so that they can be certified and they can offer MTCS certified SaaS to the SMB and SME, which I think this is their key interest.
Yeah, that's very good. Let me change the format a little, because usually in this case, I ask all the questions, right? Is there any question that the audience would like to ask?
Thank you, Dr. Wang. I actually have a question for you. Earlier, you mentioned that the challenge for cloud for SMB is the skilled people, right? And I was thinking, shouldn't the idea of moving from local to cloud is to make the SMB less reliant on having skill here, especially technical skill that I'm talking about, right? So are you talking about a different kind of skill, or like why is the skill being highlighted as the biggest challenge for SMB? Thank you.
Yeah, I think it can be divided in 2 questions before I pass it on. One is that the gentleman asked, if we were to move everything up to cloud, so you should actually require less skill from the SMB, right? Because everything is on the cloud. Then the question is that what type of skills does the SMB need to have in order to help them move into the cloud? Am I right?
I think it depending on the level of adoption, right? I don't think any company can immediately change from one format to completely the other. I think it's going to be a gradual adoption process. So you start to adopt one process at a time, right? And for larger SMBs, like a few hundred people's company, they would have an MIS. So they might have people who can learn the cloud computing, big data, and they can start to adopt those. Okay, but for smaller ones, like 10, 15 people, they cannot afford any skilled people. So the best for them is basically just use the cloud services. Yeah, but they can also use the hosted private cloud. Like for example, in Japan, I think Japan's price is probably the highest in Asia countries. Our partner provide the hosted private cloud solutions with 2 servers. It's $2,000 a month, US dollars. So actually, many of the company can afford that infrastructure cost, right? And they can actually have up to 20 virtual machines. So if you calculate that, it's actually cheaper than Amazon from that perspective. Yeah. So they can start to adopt the infrastructure if they have people who can manage the cloud service. And in our case, the management is very simple. They just say, I want a machine with what size, right? And we have templates. They can have predefined machines, so they don't even need to know size. Yeah, but for other companies, they may just want to say, I want to get the POS service or logistics service along with my other services. And they might need help to link those with their in-house systems. Right. And if you go even lower in that paramount, then they might not even have IT today. Yes. So you can help them to get onto the cloud, leverage the benefit of the cloud, and without learning the technology, yes, that would be the best approach.
Yeah, I think in the Cloud Council, we also talked about how to actually get SMBs to adopt cloud, right? I think one of the reasons why we actually did the body of knowledge is because we want to have a standard sort of base ground on what really cloud is, so that not only will we need technical skills, right, as Dr. Wang mentioned, but we also need to educate, I think, the SMB bosses on what are the advantages, and when they talk to the cloud service provider, at least they're talking the same language, right? I think that's one of the reasons why we need to really understand and teach what really cloud is all about. You know, Nakamura-san, any
my presentation, one is difficulty of using cloud services for medium or small sizes, because it's very difficult migration from on-premise to the cloud services, such as a private cloud or public cloud. I think it is very easy if the whole system of these small or medium enterprises system is migrated to the cloud services. But a part of their system is migrated to cloud service. It's very difficult because it depends on their security policies, and usually there is a little some kind of a knowledge persons. So especially cloud services, or it means IaaS, PaaS, or ASP SaaS, and also the person who have a lot of knowledge about the security. So it's very difficult migration from the on-premise system to the public or cloud services. So I'm very interested in the Singapore's guidelines for migration. So,
Yao Shen, any comment?
I think the government of Singapore actually put in place quite a few incentive programs, quite a few programs to help the SMB to use technology. All right, I'm sure you are aware that they have all the iSpring and PIC tax incentive, so that you can write on. And if you need to know more, please do come drop by the IDA booth, that we can introduce to some of these programs that are run by my colleague in the industry development divisions, which will help the SME to use technology. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, with that, we are coming to a close. I think it has been quite an enlightening session for me. I think all the three gentlemen here should be the CEOs, you know, Cloud Enlightenment Officers, right? I mean, we really got a lot of information out of them today. And one more thing before we leave, a shameless plug for the Computer Society. They are running the a session in this auditorium right after this, so please do stay back and join them in their events. With that, I'd like to thank all the panel, the whole entire panel here, for sharing with us their journey to the cloud. Thank you very much.